Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of UPressPlay Sports. I'm your host, Dan. I'm your host, Richard Pereira, and joining me today is sports editor Cameron Priester and staff writer Zachary Watts. Hey guys, how's it been going? No, we are on spring break, but got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, good to be in the swing of things. Spring break, nice, well-deserved break off of school. But as we all know, sports don't stop. We're in the swing of things, basketball, women's and men's. We're getting ready for the conference tournament. So we're highly anticipated for that. And, baseball and softball as well. They're going through the motions, got through their first week or two of games. So they're starting to really solidify where they're feeling themselves in the season. But there's still a lot of things to look forward to, a lot of things to cover, and I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, no, the break from school is wonderful, to say the least. But a lot of good stuff to talk about sports-wise. Tournament coming up this weekend, CUSA for men's and women's. So yeah, a lot of good stuff to talk about.
Yep. And we're first going to go over FAU men's basketball. They ended the regular season on a very strong note, blowing out Rice 103-74 this past Thursday. And then in their season finale, they were down for a while against Louisiana Tech. Then they came back fighting as they pulled out a 76-72 win over Louisiana Tech to finish the regular season with a 28-3 record, 18-2 in conference play, with a 4-game winning streak attached to that. And after that, just announced this afternoon, Conference USA released its annual awards. And Dusty May, of course, who would have thought, with the best record in Conference USA and pretty much the best in the whole country, Dusty May takes home Conference USA's Coach of the Year award. And then when it comes to the player side of things, Elijah Martin, Janelle Davis get on the first team. Vlad Golden, he gets on third team. Shout out to him for his improvements from last season to now. And of course, for Janelle Davis, who was the biggest player to come out of nowhere with his performances off the bench and in the starting lineup as well, he takes home Conference USA's Sixth Player of the Year award. A very great year for FU men's basketball throughout the regular season. These awards is just the cherry on top, really. So, guys, what do you think of the way FU men's basketball were able to end their regular season?
I'm very impressed with how they finished out the season. It's very easy, when you get towards the end, you've already accomplished what you set out to do. We had already cut the net before going on that last road trip. So we really weren't playing for anything, but the fact that we still go out and win in dominant fashion, then the last game of the year against Louisiana Tech, had that come from behind win, it kind of just exemplifies that there's no quit in this team at all. Like, no matter what the stakes are, we continue to play our best basketball night in and night out, and it's truly impressive to see. And, you said it best, the cherry on top, the icing on the cake, just having our players be awarded for how hard they've worked this season is really nice to see. Coach Dusty May, I think we're projected before the season like a 4th or 5th, to finish in our conference. And the fact that we came out on top, undefeated at home, so many memorable moments throughout this year. And we still have many more memories to make. We have high expectations set for ourselves going into this conference tournament. So hopefully we can live up to that. But, regardless of what happens from here on out, there's nothing to hang their head on. They've had a fantastic season. They've done everything that they could have possibly imagined. And I couldn't be prouder as a fan or as a student of FAU.
Right. First off, congratulations to everyone, all 4 of those guys who got the rewards. Much deserved, and it's nice to see them getting their recognition after such an amazing year like this. And looking at the last road trip of the year, blew out Rice. That was just great. Did everything they were supposed to. But then I think that Louisiana Tech game really was a great way to kind of roll into the postseason. Going down like that and kind of staying down until late in the game and coming back late. It's really a kind of signature win, and it's how they've won games a bunch. They've played from behind a bunch of times this year, and it's just great not to see them kind of get caught up in everything after winning the CUSA regular season. And You know, Zach, you were kind of right. Like they didn't have much to play for, but in the different sense, they kind of still had a lot to play for because I feel like um, looking at the postseason now, it's kind of when and you're in looking at March Madness because I feel like even with their resume, the selection committee is gonna kind of look for every reason not to put them in. Um, which brings me to the kind of the conference tournament. I think they getting that, like I said last week, that one seed was big. They're on a different side of the bracket than Louisiana Tech, which is big, and that first round bye. And looking at it, who they catch in the second round, it's either Western Kentucky and UTEP, and they've handled all four of those games they've had against those two teams. So yeah, they really look good going into the tournament, but I feel like you kind of have to win every game and win the tournament if you want to get in. I don't think you can leave it up to the committee to give you an at-large bid because I just feel like they're gonna favor um, a North Carolina with as many losses they have, more than FAU or a Duke or just one of those big Power Five schools. They're going to look for every reason not to put FAU in there. So just don't leave it up to chance. You got to win out.
Yeah, and I would definitely understand that, Cameron. When it comes to this team, my expectation for them is to, at the very least, get to the title game, because by then it would put you less at risk of missing out on March Madness. And they do have their first round bye because they had the top spot clinched to themselves. And of course, Western Kentucky and UTEP, as you mentioned, Cameron, these two teams, FE were able to beat quite handily, especially UTEP. Like UTEP's a lack of shooting from the perimeter is a big advantage to FEU's defense. And of course, Western Kentucky, it's just a matter of consistency. And we see that at the end of the season, they were unable to handle a defense like North Texas. Like they couldn't even reach the 40-point mark in a whole 40-minute game. So it's just a matter of just taking care of business in the quarterfinals against either of these two teams, and then moving on to the semifinals, and you would have either Middle Tennessee or Charlotte, so who are pretty good teams themselves. So, and then in the final, you could either have UAB, North Texas. Well, it's just the other top two team, the teams behind FEU in the standings. Like those are the best teams this conference has to offer outside of FEU. So it's just a matter of just really taking each game one at a time, just not rushing things, just making the right plays as much as possible, and get to the title game. That's really all there is to it. So
Yeah.
up to them, and of course, when this tournament is taking place in Frisco, Texas, which Zach will also be making his way to for his Texas trip, watching FEU play in the tournament in hopes of winning the tournament. So, you're going to have a lot of fun there, Zach. I know that.
Sure.
Oh, go on. Unless you want to add anything.
Oh, no, just, it's going to be an interesting experience. It's good to have, some familiar faces from campus heading out there to support our guys and our women's team, regardless. I think one of the biggest things about road trips, because I'm sure this is a neutral site for most teams other than the teams based out of the Texas area, but being in a new environment, you kind of have to make smaller adjustments off the court, like whether it be like sleeping in or getting your routines that you aren't normally allowed to do when you're back at home. It isn't the easiest thing in the world, but if there's anyone or any team capable of doing so, I do think it's the Owls. We've played exceptionally well on the road. We're better off at home, but even on the road, we'll take the battle to others. So, I'm more than confident in our guys. And as for our women's team, all it takes is one win to get some momentum going, and we'll kind of touch up on them in a minute. But, I still have some high hopes for them as well heading into the conference tournament.
Yeah, and speaking of women's basketball, that will be our next topic. Unfortunately, unlike men's basketball, they were unable to end their season on a good note. They lost 76-61 to Rice last Thursday, and then 2 days later lost 65-60. Close game, for the home finale against Louisiana Tech, finishing the regular season with a 12-17 record, 5-15 in conference play, which includes an 8-game losing streak, and a lot of games lost in their last 10. So not the best way to end the season, but of course, as you said, Zach, all it really takes is one win, and they could have that one win against UTSA starting on Wednesday at 3 p.m. on March 8th. So what do you guys think has to be done for this team to finally get themselves together, get that one win, really get things going?
I think an important thing to point out is, with UTSA being your first matchup, you did split with them in the regular season. It was kind of a weird scenario, though. You beat them at their house, and then they end up beating us at our house. So it being kind of neutral site, maybe that'll be a little bit better for the two teams.
It was the other way around, Zach. It was the other way around.
It was the other way around?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
FU beat them at home and then lost to them on the road.
Okay, well, okay, yeah, I see enough. But, with that scenario going down, you've seen what it takes to beat this team, and you've also seen what they've taken advantage of in your retrospect. So I guess it's just back to the drawing board, trying to build up a game plan, because you've had a decent amount of time off heading into this tournament. So, 4 days isn't a ton of time, but, enough to kind of piece things together, maybe make some adjustments. Hopefully the flight over will help clear your heads a little bit. Another thing I'll point out is the last game of the season, the loss to Louisiana Tech. We had lost to them earlier in the year, but that was we were able to close the gap in that regard. We were able to fix our mistakes in some end. We were able to play better defense. One of our biggest strengths for our women's team this season has been how dominant they've been on the boards. It's just kind of been that one quarter out of 4 we've kind of fallen asleep on. But when the stakes are the highest, like it will be in this tournament, maybe you don't have that slow quarter. Maybe everyone's playing their best version of themselves. Maybe everyone's on their A game. That's what you hope for. Hopefully when the lights are the brightest, your stars tend to shine the most. I know we have a ton of players out there that we talked about early in the year not being able to step up offensively as a unit, but we have 1 or 2 stars shine out per game. Hopefully they're able to put that together as a team and really just kind of showcase what the true talents are of this women's roster. And I think we can do that.
Yeah, coming off, 8 straight losses, to finish 11th in the conference or last in the conference for the second straight year is tough. But there are things to kind of feel positive about going into the tournament. Like Zach said, they split the season series with UTSA, and I think of those 8 losses, you can't feel the best about a loss, but of those 8 straight losses, they look the best against Louisiana Tech in the season finale. The common theme, I think, through that 8-game skid was falling behind in the first quarter, and although improving in the second quarter and then through the second half, they were just never able to dig themselves out of that hole. That wasn't the case against Louisiana Tech. I think going to the second quarter, they were down 2, and then the halftime deficit wasn't much larger than that. They weren't really playing from a large deficit. It was more, they kind of just kept it close all game and then fell apart. So it's a loss, but that's an improvement. I guess they kind of fixed what they were lacking, and now with this week off, maybe they can kind of build upon that, and turn that maybe kind of that same thing and not tail off towards the end, and turn it into a win against a team that they've already taken down once this year. It wasn't that long ago that they played UTSA for the second time. So it's a very familiar opponent. And despite taking the 11th seed, I don't think it's a horrible matchup for FAU. So there are things. It is disappointing way to end the season. There are things to feel positive about after a kind of 4-day reset heading into the tournament. And it's basically a new season now. Yeah, it was kind of disappointing the way the season ended, but that honestly doesn't matter anymore. It's behind you. Every team is 0-0 now.
Yeah. And when it comes down to it, it's really their offense that needs to come alive. Like, they only have 1 scorer above double digits, and that's Anaya Hubbard, who has done tremendous in her freshman year. Of course, it's not perfect. Her free throw shooting could always be better. It's at 65%. She missed a lot of free throws at the charity stripe, but she is without a doubt their best offensive player, and their best scorer. So if they could get more scoring around her for the tournament, and especially for next season, I think women's basketball will be on the upward trajectory, as they have been this season. They improved massively from their 5-win season the year prior. But of course, there's always work to be done to be much better. And this season showed that they still have a lot of work to do at the offensively speaking. So best of luck to them, and hopefully they can pull out a win or two, maybe two, for the tournament. And with that, we move on to FU baseball. After pulling out a tremendous upset win over number 22 Miami at home, 6-5 win with a spectacular performance from Nolan Schanuel, who fired away 2 home runs last Tuesday, they were unable to keep that momentum going as they got swept in a 3-game series at home to the UConn Huskies, losing Friday 6-4, Saturday 5-1, and 8-2 on Sunday in the finale. So not the best way to follow up with a win over Miami, but it happens. It happens. It's been a while since the baseball team had a series loss. The first time this happened was back in 2021. So it's been quite a while since they got swept. So now they just have to bounce back as they will head out to Florida, currently ranked number 6 in the country, for later tonight at 6 p.m. and then tomorrow, of course, at 6 p.m. as well. So what are your guys' thoughts on how FU should approach these matchups against the Gators?
Well, it's very impressive to see how they played against Miami. I mean, opening up the season, it seemed the offense really carried their load for the most part. I think we were averaging like 9 runs on double-digit hits through our first series through like Monmouth, USF, and even our game at UCF. And then with the Miami game, you finally play a top 25 opponent. You see what some of the best in the country look like, and you're able to beat them we're at home against that. So we were able to show one of the top teams in the country how well we were able to play. But then to come out against UConn, maybe I don't want to blame it on this, but maybe after coming off a big win, you just kind of like think like you can relax a little bit. But baseball's a tough sport. Anyone can beat anybody on any given day. It's just kind of how it is across all sports, and this is just an exemplary fact of that. UConn came to play. They showed up in our house and shut us down. Only to see the bats kind of fall silent that way, and I think the best showcase of that was even in the last game. Even down 8-2 going to the last inning, we had runners on the corners with nobody out in the heart of our lineup in the plate. And, usually that's a guarantee for runs to get put on the board to kind of give us a late rally at this. And we just kind of got shut down. And even Coach Mack was like, that's unprecedented. Like, I didn't even see it coming. Like it's just some things that happen. And, it's especially tough when you have to turn around and immediately travel up to Gainesville and play the number 6 team in the country. Like, that's an extremely difficult task to overcome. But, maybe just taking one away and splitting the series up there, that can give you a huge momentum shift, especially since you're coming back home the week after and playing a 4-game series against Harvard. So, these next 2 games can be very telling of where our mind's at for our players and what we're going to be doing moving forward for the rest of the season. Because right now, the opening month of baseball season is your tone setter. You kind of set the tone for how you're going to play the rest of the season out. And I think we really have to show these other teams, not only in our conference, but out of conference, that we're a better team than we were last year. We're playing not only for a conference championship, but we're trying to play for an Omaha berth. So that's kind of how we have to look at it moving forward.
Yeah. Starting with kind of the Miami game, that was a really, really, really impressive win, especially kind of how it happened. I think it was the 3rd at bat of the game in the top of the 1st where I can't remember his name for Miami hit a nuke, and at that was kind of gave them the momentum. It got their dugout really fired up, and to kind of come back from that and to hold an impressive offense like that, and the number 22 at the time it was, I think, team in the nation to just 5 runs, like Max said after the game, like that's a really impressive win. And I definitely I kind of agree with Zach that maybe they kind of maybe they let that get to their heads a little bit, but maybe not, because I'm sure they understood like who UConn was, because UConn's not a they're a very good team. They're probably one of the tougher teams they'll face all year. I think they were 20 something ranked preseason. Yeah, and just the bats weren't working. They couldn't string together just a group any like, groups of hits. It was anytime they seemed to get a runner on, it was like pop out, fly out. It was a lot of 3 batter innings for them, and you're just not going to win a lot of baseball games playing like that. So just I think it helps. It'll help them come down to earth a little bit, and that's good going into the highest ranked team you're gonna face all season probably. So yeah, that maybe the coming down to earth is good a little bit, but um, look at Florida. They got to be able to string together hits. You can't be leaving runners on. Um, you can't be making errors. You can't. The margin of error is so small against a team like this. So just clean baseball. You can't leave runners on. You have to take every scoring opportunity. Be aggressive on the base paths. Um, take advantage of every opportunity you have.
Yep, definitely, Cameron. Best of luck to them heading on to Gainesville against the Gators, and of course, returning home to take on Harvard, who aren't exactly the best team, haven't exactly been at their best season this season, but as we've seen against UConn, you can't underestimate your competition. So best of luck again. Once again, best of luck to them, especially against Florida. So, you know. And with that will conclude our section with FU sports. Now we head on to national sports, and for our own topic in that area is the NBA. Well, LeBron's down for the count for the Lakers, but the Lakers are persevering. They are currently tied for one of the playing spots in the Western Conference, as the Utah Jazz, Portland Trailblazers, and New Orleans Pelicans are starting to slip down a little bit with a couple of losses here and there. The New York Knicks are red hot in the Eastern Conference. They pulled off a pretty good win over the Celtics on the road, especially thanks to Emmanuel Quickley's spectacular game in the starting lineup in place of Jalen Brunson, who sat out that game due to a minor injury, who will be day-to-day. The Milwaukee Bucks, who had a pretty big winning streak, finally saw that end. But of course, they now have the top spot. So, guys, a lot of things happen in the NBA, but man, it's been quite entertaining. So I want to know what you guys think of how the NBA looks at the moment with their standings.
As it stands right now, I don't think anything's changed much with the Eastern side. I know teams have been rising up. Like I know the Knicks have been playing really well, 9 in a row. It just seems like from a Celtics fan standpoint, it's not promising to see us lose so many games.
Overtime.
Yeah, just does not help. And then like some unsung heroes just coming out of nowhere to beat us. I mean, you talk about Manuel Quickley just stepping up in Jalen Brunson's spot, like that has to be a must win, and we just get absolutely dominated in that regard. And then you look back at the Brooklyn Nets. Bridges just absolutely picks us apart, demolishes us. Like I don't know what to do there. Also, huge shout out to Mikal Bridges. He gets a new scenery, leaves Phoenix for a contender, kind of just shipped off to Brooklyn as whatever, and he's really stepped up and showed that like all he needed was a chance. And he's become I'm not going to say superstar, but he's really stepped up in his position there for Brooklyn. So I'm really happy for him. As for the Western side of things, Lakers are still a big question mark because with LeBron being out, you really don't know how they're going to play. AD is made of glass, so it just seems like he never can stay on the court for multiple weeks at a time. And then of course the whole Ja Morant debacle that's been going down in recent weeks. Like I don't even know what.
Very good opportunity for the Lakers to get a win tonight. They Memphis tonight, so very good chance to get a win and be in the playing spot.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope, but knowing basketball, anything can happen.
Not to
all
mention Brandon Clark being out for the rest of the season with a torn Achilles. Yeah,
oh yeah, that's right. But
they do lose a little bit of their depth at the moment.
yeah, I mean, other than that, MVP race has stayed the same. I know I saw Tatum's stock rise a little bit. They're just throwing his name back in there, but it seems like Jokic is well on his way to winning a three-peat. And if he doesn't win a title this year, then that raises some major red flags for what the MVP award actually is. Because you can have as much stats as you want, but if you're not bringing home rings, I don't really care too much. But that's all I gotta say.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of on the same wavelength that my opinions haven't shifted too much. Like looking at the Celtics, even with like the 3 straight losses, I don't want to tell you Celtics fans how to feel, but I really don't look at that like and think like I don't think it like kind of shifts my opinion on that too much too. Them 2 of those games were like 2 overtime games that happened both within like 24 hours, and I just think especially the Knicks loss, it tells me more about New York than it does Boston. Without being able to go toe to toe them like without Brunson, that's and with Emmanuel quickly going for I don't remember how many you said
He had over
30,
35. He had over
35.
over
That's what you want to see,
39.
Yeah, that like a performance like that, whatever it came to, that's kind of like what you want to see, especially out of, a kind of younger player like that. Um, so I think it's more telling of the improvements they're making than Boston, kind of falling off. I still think that it's them and uh, Milwaukee's like conference to lose. And I think like the West my opinion hasn't changed much. It's just gonna be a shootout. I still think like the Lakers have the roster now to like get to that playing spot. But yeah, my opinions haven't changed much. I will say I am praying for a series where we get Suns Mavericks somehow in the playoffs. I need 7 games of that. That'd be peak basketball, but
Yeah. By the way, quickly had 38 against Boston. So
38. That's crazy, and that's kind of the form you want like your young guys to be heading into the postseason. So that's a great win for New York.
but yeah, as you were talking about, Cameron, Suns, Mavericks, that would be well, knowing Luka Doncic's hostility towards Phoenix, especially after the way he embarrassed them in game 7. Now that we see the Suns as they are right now with Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, you know, even though for the Mavs it's really just Kyrie Irving and Luka, that is a series that's must watch basketball.
And a series like that would just be so good for the NBA because all season we've been talking about like how they haven't been able to like flex their games and dudes sitting out. So 7 straight games of like 4 of like the best players in the world like going at it would just be so great for the NBA and just so fun to watch. So I'm really hoping we get that.
Even if that doesn't happen, a good consolation would be Suns Warriors. Yeah, that would be a very close second. The defending champions against what's supposed to be a super team.
I can't picture like any. I know I'm not gonna say that. I don't want to say this like knock on wood, but I can't picture in the West at least any really bad like kind of blowout playoff series because it's just kind of everybody. It's kind of so even out there. I think we could get a bunch of like 7-game down to the wire series out in the West in the playoffs.
Zach, your thoughts?
Yeah, just in terms of playoff series, I mean, every year it seems like we have our matchmaking going on in our heads, what we'd like to see. But, not to try to put this out there, but there's so many things that can change from here to the end of the season, even seeing what's gone on with John Morant, like players can get suspended, injuries. Like there's so many things that could take away from us. Obviously not trying to be too pessimistic, but there's also going to be our playoff performers. Some teams are just regular season performers and some teams just know how to show up in the playoffs. And I hope this is the case because, it's glad to see we've moved away from somewhat of the super team era. And maybe that's just because we just have just a plethora of talent throughout the NBA, and every team seems to put up ridiculous numbers each and every night. And that's nothing to knock on. But, I just hope we don't set our expectations too high going into it because, hey, maybe Luka just shows up and knocks the Suns out in 4. Who knows? Like, fingers crossed. That's what I'm playing for. Maybe LeBron comes back, leads it like a 2018 type run. Who knows? Also praying for that. But, my dream is still going to be Lakers Celtics finals. It's probably not going to happen.
I wish.
But that's my dream. But other than that,
it could happen. It could happen.
Never say never. Never say.
And then we see the Sacramento Kings just continue to persevere. They are creeping in on that second spot where Memphis is at right now, knowing that Ja Morant and Brandon Clark are out at the moment, especially Brandon Clark. The Kings could very well get that second spot, take that second spot away from Memphis, and pretty much clinch their division title, their playoff spot, and a pretty good first round matchup against who could either be the Mavericks or Clippers right now, as it stands right now. So whichever team they want, I don't know, because they've shown that they can handle the Clippers, which says a lot about the Clippers in a bad way than it does about the Mavericks themselves, because I think the Mavs would cause more trouble to the Kings, while the Clippers are just inconsistent at the moment. Like, they lost a lot of games. And while they did just win recently, it's just not been a good start for Russell Westbrook's time there since he got there. So it's just very interesting to see the playoff scenarios that could happen with the playoff picture as it stands. But man, the Clippers have just been unfortunate.
One thing I'm worried about the Grizzlies, because I due to like kind of the oddity of the situation with Ja Morant, like it's kind of, there's no real timetable on when he returns, and like it's kind of like an NBA kind of investigation going on, and
he's suspended for a few games, but we don't know when he actually returns.
Right. But this is just not what you need at the end of the season. Like, you don't need your best player, first of all, just involved with something like this. Yeah. Just not only something like this, you don't want you shouldn't have your best player like missing like large amounts of games at this point of season. You don't want to be having like a hard reset when you're kind of like you're about to go in the playoffs, and without Ja, you could just lose that 2 seed and kind of get not as great of a matchup as you had before. This whole situation is bad news for the Grizzlies.
Yeah, not only that, I think it's just a bad look for the league in general. One of your top superstars who you continuously want to put on all your social media posts, you kind of want to showcase to the world as like one of like your role models for the league, ends up in a predicament like this. It just makes for a weird situation because you don't really know what to do. And I feel even worse so for the Memphis side of things, because when you're trying to stick in that groove with all your star players on the court and you're trying to get things rolling, to have an incident like this, even when he does return back to the team, outside of the question of whether he'll be back to like peak form or whether he's going to be a little off. I mean, obviously he's still going to put some work in off the court. He's still going to be practicing, but just that mental disconnect from the team just for that little time off, like that's huge, especially this late in the season. And when you're making a playoff push and you got to look at one another knowing you can trust someone or not, with an incident like this, it's not the easiest thing to do in the world. So best case scenario, hopefully we move on from this as quickly as possible. But then again, the NBA is going to do their due diligence.
Are they?
Their investigation. I mean, hey, you would hope.
I feel for you. I agree that I feel for the Grizzlies, but also I think kind of shame on them, because part of like before the Instagram live, it was like a day before the Washington Post came out with the thing about the 17-year-old. So
yeah.
But that was months ago. How come the Grizzlies didn't realize the Grizzlies didn't realize he needed help, or whatever they came out in their statement said last summer when he did the things that are coming to light now? Why, like, come on. And kind of shame on Ja too, because like the reports come out and then 4 hours later is when you go on live with your nonsense. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Plain. But it is a bad look. I agree.
Yeah, and it seemed to be like I don't know because I know now looking at it, it seems like it just came out of nowhere, but it was kind of like a slow build. Like people were always like, you had the whole Shannon Sharp situation with the Grizzlies, and he was saying, "Jaw, you're not built for this. Like you are not made for it." And then Jaw is out here like trying to like prove himself. That I don't know what the man's going through mentally, but you feel like he has something to prove. But like, dude, you're a basketball player. Like you made it. You don't really have anything to prove to anybody. So I don't know why you feel the need to do what you're doing, but maybe you can only keep things under wraps for so long. Because I mean, if it did happen with the 17-year-old incident, however long ago, the fact that that was kept under wraps for so long, because I had heard no media coverage of it whatsoever. Maybe it was just because we were like waiting for the facts to come out type of scenario, but I hadn't heard any of it. And then suddenly one bad thing happens after another, and suddenly all these things come to light at once. When you're put under a microscope like that, every little thing you do wrong is going to come to light. So maybe this was the best time for it to be addressed because, if it's this early on in his career, you can be able to move on from this, grow as a person, kind of reach your maturity level in an aspect. So, there's a little bit of good and everything, but hopefully it doesn't impact any basketball implications moving forward. Because the last thing we want to do is hurt the product that's already been damaged by our whole reffing fiasco. Even last night, Scott Foster's crew calling a foul, and you have the other ref looking around like, who do we just call a penalty on? Like, how does that happen? Like, where's the disconnect here? It just seems like a joke at this point.
Yeah, and it is a bad look for the NBA. And of course, Ja Morant, hopefully he does better from this, like moves on from this and learns from it. But yeah, when it comes to the Grizzlies, they better hope this gets resolved as soon as possible. With that, that'll be it for this episode of UPressPlay Sports. Make sure to hit like and subscribe, click the bell to keep up with notifications from us. Also be sure to go on upressonline.com to keep up with news, sports, and more content alike. To follow us on Twitter, it's for me, at Rich26Pereira, for Cameron, at PrehistorCameron, and for Zach, at ZachWatts1_. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great day.